Hi everybody, today we are here for a new interview celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Italian Center for Single Session Therapy. We are happy to have Pam Rycroft with us today. Hi Pam.
Hello, Esther. Lovely to be here.
Pam Rycroft is a psychologist and family therapist who has worked in the areas of mental health, child guidance, ambulance crisis line, and asylum seeker support, as well as spending the majority of her professional life at the Bouverie Center, a publicity-funded statewide family therapy service. Here she held position of training coordinator, then clinical manager, where in 1994 she became part of the regional clinical research team, investigating the possibility for Bouverie of adopting this approach. All these years later, while is mainly retired, she continued to provide clinical supervision to the current single session therapy team at the Bouverie Center. How did you first fall in love with single session therapy?
Ah, well, it was during that time when I was the clinical program manager and struggling with long waiting lists and families who were dealing with all sorts of issues, trauma, mental health issues, conflict, and worrying about how long they were waiting to be seen. So when we got together, Jeff and Colin Reese, who was the director at the time, and myself, with a small team around us to investigate, could this crazy idea of, seeing people once and then following them up and checking whether they were happy with one or wanted more, whether this could actually work for us. Now, I loved and still do my long-term clients. When you really get to know them and you see them through all sorts of things in life. But when we began working, that's when we began doing the work and following clients up. That's when I fell in love with it, Esther. When I heard back from clients and when I realized how poor we were at predicting which families would do well just with the briefest therapy with one session, and which families would want to need more. And sometimes I would ring the family thinking, oh no, that session wasn't great. They're going to need more work. I just know they're going to say they want long-term work. But I'd talk to them and they'd say, actually, things are going really well, as long as we can come back in the future if we need to. And I would get surprised again and again. It's worked the other way sometimes too. When thought I'd done a really well, thought the session had gone really well, and I'd ring them and think, they're going to be doing fine. Sometimes they said, no, we need to come back. But even when they came back, as I followed things through in, more in a research kind of way, I noticed that whilst our numbers matched Moshe Talman's at the time, that about half the time people did well and were happy with one session. Even those that wanted more tended to use less than families had been in the past on average, if that makes sense. They tended to come back for two or maybe three more sessions. And that was all. And what I loved about that wasn't just that idea of, oh, you can do great work in one. It was that it also created more resource for families that wanted and needed more input, more intensive work. So that was always the challenge, to know how to service families, do the right thing in a way that was fair and equitable and ethical. And so when we let our clients decide for themselves, it actually worked much better than us trying to decide who should get what. I love that. Yeah. And then that love was deepened when I happened to be in England. I was on some long service leave, and Moshe Talman was giving a workshop there in London, and I was able to attend and meet him and persuade him to come to Melbourne, Australia. And that began a relationship that's continued, a very strong relationship, friendship, as well as a collegiate relationship. Um, and I just always did love Moshe's, his philosophy, really, his idea that our job as therapists is to go in there, be as helpful as we can, and get out of people's lives as quickly as possible to, work with people's resources and empower them to find their resource and for solving their own problems. I love that. And as I said earlier to you off camera, it just to me, it fitted with my own kind of philosophy and preferred way of working in inviting such collaboration from the clients. And so that it felt like a really ethical way to work and just good practice.
Yes, just good practice.
Yeah, yeah.
What is your experience with the Italian Center for Single Session Therapy?
Well, we we were so pleased to meet Flavio and Federico at our, I think it was 2019
Okay.
conference. Yeah, just before COVID, um, in Melbourne. And I will always remember, so I could see the image of Flavio striding across the stage talking about mindset. It's really pushing the message about mindset. It was very, very memorable and impressive, and it was wonderful speaking to them. And then by the end of that conference, having Flavio seriously consider doing the next symposium because we worried that maybe it could have ended there had somebody
Yeah.
not picked up, the ball and run with it. So ever so grateful because that has led to all these other wonderful relationships. And then was it 2023,
Yeah.
the symposium in Rome, and meeting, I mean, the whole team. I fell in love with the team before I even got there. Just the emailing, just the warmth and welcoming, and to get there and kind of experience the sense of teamness that really did, that struck me from the very beginning, just in the way that the whole symposium was run and just observing you working together. It was lovely. And yeah, the passion, the commitment, and the energy, great. And then, of course, there's been the publication since and the lovely kind of connection and just growing. It feels like you have just grown SST, grown the message, got it out there, drawn so many more people in. Yeah.
Thank you, Pam. And how do you use the single session therapy in your life today?
Yeah, I am mostly retired, still doing that little bit of supervision, but it's wonderful for me because my heart is in the clinical work, and to still to sit each month with a group of passionate clinicians who work really hard, and they use a single session thinking all the time, and it's challenging. It is really, the work they do is incredibly challenging, but it is still a philosophy and a framework that fits so well. And so I do that bit of supervision, and I do some other supervision with individual people. Um, and of course, I use a single session framework and thinking in my own supervision as well. But also things like I'm now very involved with what's called University of the Third Age here, where I live on the coast in Victoria. And we have a lot of meetings, and I don't enjoy meetings, like, especially long, boring meetings,
Okay.
but to actually have a single session kind of framework and kind of keep in mind how can we best use this time and what's the outcome we're looking for. And it's really helpful. So even at things like that, it's still really useful.
Yeah. And what do you think is the future of the single session therapy?
Yeah, that's a big question. Look, I'm encouraged by people like you, by your center. I just think now it feels as though it is spreading. I think there's a challenge to to work with mainstream psychology universities, university courses in psychology and psychiatry, but I hope it's beginning to happen. I do have a lot of hope. Um, and look, I think it is hard once people, like, as you were saying, I mean, once people hear about what it is and that it's not one-offs or trying to do, a whole therapy in one, but it's a way to make the most of every single encounter, and that it's responsive, it's collaborative. Once people get that and get that it is good practice, I think it's hard to ignore. So I think it's like, it's getting the message there and particularly into the mainstream that's the challenge, but I'm hopeful.
And would you like to leave us a special birthday wish for the 10th anniversary of the Italian
Yeah.
Center?
I would, and I might have to kind of look at my own notes to remember because this is really important.
Okay.
Firstly, I do want to congratulate the Italian Centre for Single Session Therapy. Its integrity, I think, for me, living what you are teaching, doing, practicing what you preach, we say here, for being that warm, responsive, open-minded, collaborative, positive, and passionate organization, and for continuing to teach, but also to learn from teaching, to share your learnings, and to being a really important hub and reference point for anybody wanting to learn about this approach. And my wish for the centre is that it continues to grow and thrive without ever losing that warmth and that passion and the lovely energy and the values that are evident in what you do.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lovely talking to you.